Morning, Stephen. How are you?
Good morning, Peter. Very well. How you doing yourself?
I'm very good. Thank you, Stephen. Welcome to the Business Spotlight. Thanks very much for taking the time to chat with me today. Could we start? Could you tell me a little about yourself, your background, and your business, please?
Absolutely. So I'm CEO and co-founder of a business called Foresight. And what we're aiming to do is unlock the 1% of GDP growth that's tied up in regulatory policy uncertainty. I'm sure we'll unpack a little bit of that as we continue in the conversation. My background is in chemistry, and more specifically in the aerospace and defense industry. So after doing a PhD at Queen's, I went into aerospace and defense, working on substitution of hazardous chemistries from manufacturing processes, but more specifically helping companies comply with chemical regulations across the European markets.
And how long has Foresight been in existence for?
So officially kind of launched or started the current phase of work in May of last year. That's whenever I left the aerospace industry to focus on Foresight full time. And over that time, we've been doing a lot of prototyping, product building, software, testing with potential customers, and we got our initial release of our product in back end of last year. And we've just started to onboard our customers early this year.
And what was it that made you take the leap from employee to your own business?
Good question. I think it was always something that was always in the back of my mind. I suppose what really cemented it was I started out in aerospace and defense back in 2012 and I went consultancy side in 2017. Um,
Hmm.
Aerospace and defense, I love working in the industry and it's taught me a lot of great fundamentals with regards to how business and large, particularly large companies work. Going consultancy side, it was moving into a smaller business, and rather than being a small cog in a large, machine, you're a much bigger cog in a much smaller machine. Being in the pointy side of the business, I really actually, really enjoyed that. I took a stint back into aerospace and defense for a year or just over a year, and it just felt awkward for me to fit back into being that small cog again. So a long-winded way of saying it, I wanted to have much more control over my day-to-day and the success of an organization.
And tell me about your target market. Who could benefit from working with you and the Foresight?
So Foresight in its current iteration is a platform that helps companies monitor changes to chemical regulatory policy in different markets around the world. And this regulatory policy impacts in any company that uses chemicals for adding value to their products. So that could be aerospace and defense companies, pharmaceuticals, chemical companies, consumer good companies. But I suppose our sweet spot we have at the moment is any product manufacturer that's probably tier two, tier three in the chemicals value chain. So not making the chemistry, but kind of mixing the chemistry and adding the chemistry to their products. I suppose then in terms of size of the organization, it'll be over 1,000 employees, maybe turning over £1 billion of revenue a year, um, and probably working in an industry or where they have lots of different chemicals as part of a complex supply chain. So more than 100 chemicals across suppliers that are based in maybe European and US markets, that kind of thing. So we've identified quite a few of these kinds of companies. We have a weekly newsletter, and we have some of these companies already signed up on our newsletter. So that's a really good way to start building brand awareness and start getting face time with some of those companies as well.
And what's been your biggest lesson in business along the way since launching Foresight?
I suppose the hardest thing is maintaining focus all the time. And the biggest lesson is to maintain focus as much as possible. I suppose coming from industry, you're working to annual business plans, and there's a lot of wiggle room in there for doing work which is not necessarily value add to the projects you might be working on, as an example.
Mhm.
Jumping in the consultancy side, there is only one metric, one focus, and that is the revenue target. Nothing else really matters. Everything you do is in support of that revenue target, whether that be managing your team, whether that be on the sales side, even the marketing that you might do to, get people top of the sales funnel. Whenever you jump then into a startup, there's lots of different things that you could be doing. You could be, building product, you could be doing marketing, you could be doing sales, you could be applying for business awards, or you could be going on accelerator programs, that kind of thing. I suppose then it's just how do you focus on the things that you need to do in order to get from 0 to 1, I suppose. For us last year, we got lucky enough to get on the Founders Lab program that was run out of Ormo Labs, and that was really, really good for us. Me and my co-founder Johnny, it helped us focus a little bit more, and there was coaching provided by some of the mentors there that helped us identify what we need to be doing for 2024, which is to get our product launched and get those initial sales. And then we're bringing that learning right through to what we're doing this year. So yeah, biggest lesson is focus and continue trying to be focused on a daily and weekly basis.
And what have you learned about yourself along the way?
I suppose in all that journey, I suppose identifying whenever I'm under pressure a little bit, I suppose. And the biggest learning, I suppose, is I become a little bit more easily irritable if there's a little bit too much pressure on. Last year was a big year. We launched Foresight. We were on the Founder Labs program. Had a child with my wife and I actually got married to my now wife as well. So it was a very, very busy 2024. But I would say that um, overall, that wasn't as stressful as maybe some of the days I had in consultancy. And the reason for that is because, with Foresight, I have a bit more control with what my objectives are day to day, so I can relieve some pressures where necessary. But whenever I was working in consultancy, especially in an organization where, I was part of the leadership team, but not necessarily setting the company direction, it was much harder to be able to let some stuff go for a short time while I was able to kind of recharge and refocus.
And what about who's been your biggest influence along the way?
I suppose in the early days, coming out of university, a big eye opener for me was some of the functional leadership teams in Rolls-Royce, where I started out my career. There were some folks there that were extremely, extremely smart, not just from, in my view, kind of was like an academic kind of smartness, but how you engage with other people across functions and the stakeholder management and that kind of thing. I suppose another big influence on that for me was one of my previous managing director whenever I was working in consultancy. His name's Darrell, and I suppose he was a good coach and mentor in some ways, but he was also gave me accountability and responsibility for delivering, a particular area of focus for the consultancy. And by giving me that responsibility, I really felt that I got my teeth into it and give me a little bit of a playground to learn some of the fundamentals around, you know, managing people for the revenue outcome, being responsible commercially for marketing and sales, you know, ensuring customer success and all of those kind of things. So if you're not giving, if there's no wind in your sails, you don't know how to sail, if you know what I mean. So he was the one that kind of gave me that.
Nice analogy, like that one. What about, tell me what gets you out of bed in the morning and drives your passion for your business?
I suppose the key thing is chemicals themselves. It's for me, I'm biased. I've been working in this for over 12 years now. Whenever I was doing chemistry at university, I was very haphazard with my use of chemicals, I would say.
That
I didn't
sounds risky from a non-chemist. That's even my outsider's perspective.
yeah,
Haphazard and chemicals aren't too.
I know, like, I mean, I done the cost risk assessments and all of that, and I wore the PPE, but maybe I would have used the fume hood a little bit more often. But the key thing is working in this space, the amount of chemicals that we have around us, which can cause harm, is crazy. It's not until you start looking at things and realizing that these chemicals are the things that you use every day. One of those, I suppose, was banned, just as an example. And this is the stuff that's happening all the time that we're helping our company, our your users monitor.
Mhm.
Bisphenol A was, for example, was just banned in plastic packaging across Europe back end of last year. Previous to that, another big one was talcum powder, which magnesium silicate. It was, uh, I suppose, decision was made, a particular committee in the European Chemicals Agency, that it is carcinogenic. And that talcum powder itself, well, it was used to be used as talcum powder for baby powder, but it's not so much any longer. But it is
Mm.
still used as a food additive, and it's also used in pharmaceutical industry as well. And the fact that it causes cancer is now being identified as causing cancer, opens it up to a whole swathe of new regulation, which could be implemented to mitigate the risk to human health and the environment, well, particularly human health in this case. Well, I mean, it's in everything on all the products. Just another example, there was a consumer report issued back in last year for testing of food in California, in the Bay State area. They just tested, I think, over 100 food and beverage items and found that 86% of them contain measurable or detectable levels of plastic substances. And some of those are endocrine disruptors, some of those are toxic to reproductive organs, and some of those have multi-generational effects as well. So it's not just what's happening to us, but it's happening to the children we have yet to have.
Wow. And let's say you were on a desert island with no chemicals to play with, but you were allowed to listen to a podcast or read a book. What would you choose?
Um, I suppose if we're keeping it business oriented, one of the books that I found really useful is Richard Rumelt's Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. It kind of come to me in a weird way. As my now wife, was interviewing for a job whenever we were living in Cambridge, and she was asked the question, "What's the difference between a tactic and a strategic kind of decision, tactical or strategic decision?" And I was really hard. I couldn't have answered that one. I'm not too sure how she answered it, but she was given this book as a recommendation. So then I took it on, I read it, and I find it extremely useful. I think the word strategy, I have a pet peeve about the use of it now, and a lot of people overuse it. I think it's not something that's well considered. But in his definition of it, it's something that has a really defined opportunity or a risk. Guiding policy is so to help you achieve or to mitigate that risk, or achieve the opportunity. And then a set of series of actions that allow
Mhm.
you to get a hold of it. And I suppose the key thing that a lot of people are missing is those policies. I call them kind of like bumper lanes in a bowling alley. Things that decisions up front ahead of undertaking a project that prevent the project from grinding to a halt whenever particular decisions haven't been made, and
Mhm.
just delaying the implementation of the project. That's something I've seen quite a bit of in previous roles.
Yeah, I haven't read that one, so but I've got a note of that. Good man. And what's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing?
I suppose being a startup, a team of two, me and my co-founder Johnny Campbell, it's about resourcing constantly, and linked to the strategic focus, and focusing in on the things that we do on a daily or weekly basis to meet our targets. Um, but we've got creative in solving some of that. Now with AI, we've been able to do a lot more as a team of two than we think that we ever could have done previously. And I think this is something that a lot of startups are leaning into at the moment. For example, one of the things that we play around with is AI. And although we say that we're now an AI powered platform, we didn't know that right from when he started this, that is what we wanted to be or could have been.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that we do is monitor changes to market policy. And I was doing that manually for a while, and we've been able to develop AI tools that automate that. So we're able to achieve more on my side than we ever could have done without that AI being implemented. Same for Johnny, he's a product designer by trade. So he's less about building things in back end and front end. He's more about user experience. And he's lent into AI tools to actually build out the back end and front ends that he would never have been able to do before. Um, and so the resourcing is a constraint, but working within that constraint has actually allowed us to build a more resilient business, I suppose. But I mean that continues. We'll have that resourcing challenge when it comes to sales and outreach and everything else as well. So we'll have to solve that too.
And what if you could invite any three people to a dinner party, who would you invite?
So maybe not necessarily business related, but I suppose just my kind of nerdy science background. Brian Cox, so he's the science communicator. Stephen Hawking, so sadly no longer with us, and Carl Sagan, I suppose, as well. And at the dinner table, I don't think I would have much to say, but I think I would have a lot of interesting things to listen into.
Very good. And what if you could go back in time and give some advice to your 18-year-old self? What would that sound like, Stephen?
Uh, I suppose at that time, just having left County Tyrone and down to the big lights of Belfast, it would have been leaning into the books a little bit more. There's things that didn't come to me till my late 20s that I think I could have found in books or in studies at least, if I had have looked for it. And I suppose getting into fitness and running and hiking, I wish I had done that sooner, only for being able to have done it for longer. I get a lot of value out of that, especially going out into the hills. And hiking, I think, and fishing as well. I think I wish I had done more of that whenever I had the opportunity and the time that you have with university.
And instead of looking back, let's look forward. So 5 years down the line, what does Foresight look like?
So I hope that we'll be a much larger team. Um, with the advent of AI, we don't know exactly what team sizes will look like now. We're able to achieve a lot more with a lot less, but we would have a big enough team to service a significant number of users. you know, Maybe 1,000 users, working with large multinationals. We would have probably a multinational team ourselves. Um,
Mhm.
and we would probably have unlocked other policy areas, not just chemicals, but related policy areas. And then we would probably have a product or a feature set which is closer to the work to be done by our users. So as well as policy monitoring and tracking changes to policy on the markets, well, what other features can we implement to do impact assessments or to do notifications to regulatory agencies and that kind of thing. But that's all really to be discovered on the journey, I suppose. And as we onboard customers, we'll be working closely with them to find out what they need to do and then build with those outcomes in mind rather than sitting in a silo and building something that we think that they might want and then finding out that we don't exactly have product market fit.
And if somebody likes what they've heard here, Stephen, and would like to reach out to you or Johnny and get in touch with Foresight, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Probably via LinkedIn. And then second to that, on our website, it's useforesight.io. And in there, they'll find some of the latest policy updates, and they can find a contact form there as well.
Good stuff. Well, Stephen Brennan from Foresight, thanks very much for taking the time to chat with me today. I wish you, Johnny, and the business every success in the future. And yeah, best of luck for the rest of this year and beyond. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Peter.